Hello and welcome to day 4 of CanWeek. The schedule has shifted and changed a bit, and that is because this video is brought to you by PCOS Realness. I am going through it this week. However, we live on. And today we're going to be talking about The Heaviness of Things That Float by Jennifer Manuel. Firstly, shout out to my dear friend Sarah, who is the one who lent me this book so that we could have this discussion. So this book, I was a little on the fence about it, wasn't sure what to think. Then it almost had me, and then it lost me at the end. So we'll talk about that. First, however, there are some things I want to get out of the way. I liked that the author's note was at the very beginning of this book, because it is a book, as the author explicitly states in the author's note, it's about privilege. Specifically settler privilege, living in a settler colonial country of Canada. The author states that her experience in writing this novel, and I'm assuming putting her own experiences into it, is that she worked as a treaty archivist, and then she also worked as a teacher in many schools on reserves. The story is about Bernadette, or Bernie, who has worked as a nurse in this specific community for 40 years, and she is about to retire, and so she is dealing with leaving, all of that stuff. She's dealing with having to train the new nurse, give her orientation, but where the book opens up, where it begins, where we set off from, is the fact that someone from the community, who is someone that she is described as having loved as a son and who is very dear to her, goes missing. And so the rest of the book is about like the present situation with her dealing with all that stuff, including trying to find Chase Charlie, who is the name of the man who disappears, as well as weaving in parts from the past to explain her current relationship with the people in the community that she's dealing with on an everyday basis, right? So there is some kind of flashbacks, I guess, for context woven in. And I thought that was done very, very well. I have absolutely no qualms with how the story was written or presented. Like, the writing was good, storytelling was good. Obviously, this book is about personal history. It's Bernadette's personal history within the community and her past before she got there. But what I liked was that she discussed a lot of relevant contextual history for the community, for like settler colonialism, all that kind of stuff. So for instance, she would discuss things like the 60s scoop, the recent Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. She discussed Idle No More, or it was discussed because it was part of the story, as well as things like where the elders of the community burned the Indian Act, as well as the newer treaties that they've signed. Now I want to get into the ways in which Bernie, is confronting her privilege and the conversations that she's having with herself and others around that. So firstly, what I appreciated about this book is that, so at this point, so she's like 60 maybe, I don't know. She's been working there for 40 years, so it's been a while. She came there when she was much younger. And so it goes through and she discusses a lot of the biases that she had when she got there. She grew up as a white person knowing vaguely about colonialism, as you know, most of us, how we're taught about it, and then believed that she wasn't racist, and then got there and had to confront all the like underlying stuff, that biases that she didn't realize that she had. And so I really appreciated that it was a really honest look at like how you can be a well-intentioned white person who does have very racist opinions and beliefs. The second huge conversation, or multitude of conversations that happen, is when the new nurse comes to stay there for her to orient before Bernie retires and leaves for good. So, and the new nurse's name is Ren, and she is like a UBC nursing student, University of British Columbia, and she is painted as being this hippy-dippy, radical, revolutionary settler who is in it, you know, for the justice, all of this stuff, and she's coming in with all this like the language that you learn in university and social justice work, about like colonialism and all the specific like terminology around it. And so there's this really interesting contrast between Wren's theoretical knowledge, being just a white person learning about it, and then Bernadette's community work, I guess we can call it. And so there's a lot of clashing there. The character of Wren was good because it fueled a lot of discussion, and the discussions were interesting. However, I didn't like where that character went with what happened at the end. I didn't feel like that was really explained well, and it was a bit too much. But anyway, what I liked about Wren is it also made me confront me, right? Because that's basically me, right? And I don't really want to be that person. One of the things that comes up with Wren when she's talking about, like, she's just very angry. She's like mad about the whole colonial structure and paradigm and, you know, all of the stuff that she's seeing. And, you know, she expresses this to Bernadette a lot. And one of the things that Bernadette has to call her out on, this idea you have that the lives of community members are somehow like devalued because of that material aspect, right? Or that their lives are all bad because of this, right? So it's really a discussion or a flagging of ensuring that you are always considering agency and you're not victimizing. Another discussion I thought was really interesting that goes along with this specifically is that the reserve, the community, has so much tragedy as part of its history. Again, with the whole like agency and not assuming that everything is terrible thing, one of the things she discusses when she's going around the community and she's trying to teach Wren about the people who live there, the stuff she needs to know, etc. This is something that she says, which is, "It was not easy to tell these stories. So much sadness was bound up in their lives, yet their lives were so much more than just their sorrows. How should the reserve be explained to an outsider? I didn't want to turn each home into a simple tale or reduce each family to a single tragedy. At the same time, I didn't want to ignore the realities." But I also felt like the book, the plot of the story, fell into the trap of what she was explicitly trying not to do. I felt like the ending is where it lost me because it was unnecessary tragedy. And I felt like that did a disservice to what the book was actually trying to achieve. And so I found the ending very disappointing. I felt there was a little bit of tragedy for the sake of white pain and understanding, which I was deeply not a fan of. Another thing that I do want to talk about is the fact that the author of this book started something called the TRC Reading Challenge, or the Truth and Reconciliation Reading Challenge, where she challenged settlers to actually read the Truth and Reconciliation report, to read it for real. And so there, I'll leave the link down below to the website. That was it today for the heaviness of things that float, and tomorrow for our last day of CanWeek, had to shorten it because I am in so much pain. We're going to finally be talking about Even This Page is White by Vivek Shraya.